Welcome to the Apptrepreneur Show. I'm your host, Kevin the Apptrepreneur. Welcome to the podcast, which we have not done an episode of this for a very long time. I'd like to change that. This is a podcast where we will talk about entrepreneurship, tech, and, well, maybe even standing up for the little guy. There's a lot of stuff going on with unions right now, with work rights. I'm starting to feel the pinch in this economy. I'm sure you are as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about all of that. Now, I'm not going to promise this is going to become like a once a week thing. It might be once every couple weeks. It'll probably be on Fridays. Fridays seems to be a pretty good time for me to do this. So, yeah, we are going to kind of bring the show back whenever I can. So I know I don't have much of an audience anymore, but for those of you who do watch, thank you so much for doing so. And today we want to talk about self-checkout lines. Now, in the years that I've been doing this channel, especially back in the Uber and Lyft days, automation has always been a huge concern for the little guy. This goes back to even like the autonomous cars. Like one of the reasons Uber and Lyft were valued so high is because they were going to create autonomous cars. These cars were going to drive people. You wouldn't need to pay drivers. That would eliminate a huge expense. And I remember, when I talked to like Randy Shear of like Auto Auctions Rebuilds and other people, I was one of the biggest anti-self-driving car people. It's like, look, I just don't see it happening. They've not been able to answer the common sense questions that I have. And sure enough, to this day, we still don't have autonomous vehicles on the road, not to the extent that we were promised, and heck, not even really to that much of an extent in general. And I was asking these questions over 5 years ago. Now, another thing that has been coming up, but this one you can tangibly see in the retail sector, was self-checkout lines. Now then, this was kind of referred to as the self-checkout revolution. And every time, particularly in California, because that's where I live, like the governor signs like a minimum wage hike and fast food workers going to make $20 an hour and things like that, people always post pictures of the self-checkout machines, like, welcome to your replacements. Like, and it's weird. It's always Republicans who are doing this. Like, they're almost like goading you on, like, oh, you want to pay people a living wage? Well, look, here's the machines. Here's the machines. They're going to take your jobs. They're going to take your jobs because you dare to ask for a wage that's reasonable, I guess. Now, again, unlike the self-driving cars, these self-checkout lines can be seen in almost everything. And in fact, there was a time where it seemed like there were more self-checkout lines than there were cashiers. And we kind of figured, well, the reason they're doing that, obviously, is because they want to fire people. They want to put the machines to work. They want the customers to ring them up by themselves. And eventually, this is their plan, to just fully push them out. But years later, that has not actually happened. And in fact, the self-checkout revolution might be coming to an end because it did not actually follow up on the promises it was going to make. Now, let's look at this Business Insider article, and it's called "Retailers Appear to be Facing a Self-Checkout Reckoning." This was written by Dominic Reuter. I'm going to go over the points. It's just like the good old days, right? So, self-checkout may not be the money-saving revolution some retailers were hoping for. More than 30 years after the introduction of self-checkout and its promises of labor cost savings, the tech has become ubiquitous in stores across the U.S. Now, retailers including Costco, Walmart, and Kroger are rethinking some of their self-checkout strategies. Some are finding they still need employees to combat theft, assist with purchases, review IDs, and check receipts. We're going to go over all of these in a minute. Costco, for example, has started asking staff to check membership cards in the self-checkout lanes, as well as assist with scanning items. Now, what they mean by that is when you go to the self-checkout lane, you have to scan your Costco card for the lane to even start checking out. And when you scan that card, a picture of yourself shows up. But here's the thing. If no one's there to actually look at the picture that pops up, anyone using a a Costco card can use the self-checkout lines. And in that respect, you can, in some ways, share your Costco membership card, which that's a problem. As this article points out, the company said the move would help crack down on shoppers improperly sharing memberships at self-checkout registers. Costco relies on membership fees for most of its profit. Walmart said last week that it was pulling self-checkout from at least 3 stores in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and replacing the lanes with traditional staffing registers. So that's very interesting. Walmart, who definitely pushes us more than others. I've been to Walmart stores, and like, I think out of all the retailers, theirs has the most self-checkout machines. So the fact that Walmart, at least in a few of these stores, have basically gotten rid of them and brought back the cashiers, that's saying something. Now, that being said, the company didn't elaborate on reasons for the change and said it had no plans for widespread removal of self-checkout. Walmart started rolling out a hybrid approach to self-checkout in 2020. The redesigned checkout zones replaced traditional lanes with a staffed coral of kiosks where shoppers could opt to scan and pay on their own or have a worker do it for them. Now, why would you have a self-checkout kiosk if you're going to have a worker check it out for you? And trust me, there's a lot of older people who these machines, they're like, I mean, it's like they're reading German. They just don't know how to use them, even though they should, in theory, be self-taught. They should be intuitive, as they say, but they just aren't. And so they have workers do it for them, which defeats the purpose of having them. A press release touted the redesign's human touch. In this new layout, you get greeted from the entranceway and helped all the way through the whole process, a store manager said in a release. We will go to any register and we will help you in any fashion you want, whether it's checking out one item or all the items. Any questions you have, we're right there for you. And this is a TikTok video where, as you can see, even though these are self-checkout lanes, let's redo it. Basically, the employees are still doing the checkouts. Makes you wonder why they have them in the first place or why they bothered to bring them there. So, Kroger, meanwhile, is going all in on self-checkout in at least one store where it's no longer offering traditional registers. But Kroger told Retail Drive the change didn't result in labor cuts, and it still had front-end staff to assist with scanning and bagging groceries. Here's the key line. This isn't exactly the labor minimizing tech retailers were promised. And yeah, it looks like even Walmart's having that thing, because Walmart, I mean, again, look at this TikTok video. There was like a employee at every self-checkout. Why have it be self-checkout at all? And by the way, when we go to Target, because there's a Target near us, and my wife loves Target, like there's always like 2 or 3 employees at the self-checkout lanes. Heck, the reason people are using the self-checkout lanes more than the staff checkout lanes is because the self-checkout lane employees will usually help them out faster than the people at the regular checkout lanes, because, you know, people now go to the checkout lanes with a cashier when they have a bunch of items. If you only have a few items, you're going to go to the self-checkout lane, but guess what? You're still going to have an employee ring it up for you, which again kind of defeats the purpose of having them. Kroger and Costco didn't respond to a request from Insider for additional details on their self-checkout strategies. A Walmart spokesperson said the company continues to review and adjust its procedures as needed. So here's the big thing, though. This might be one of the key reasons why they're bringing it back. Aside from the fact that obviously they're not being able to get rid of employees to have these self-checkout machines there. I mean, look, if the employees have to be there to help all the time, you might as well just have people go through the checkout line like anyone else. But the real reason this might be a thing is because of course, theft, something that's been a huge topic with retailers for the last year. And of course, there's a reason theft is on the rise. We are not going to talk about that right now, but I'm sure these checkout machines don't help. So, industry estimates suggest inventory losses can rise by 31 to 60% or more, depending on the number of self-checkout stations used in a store. Matt Kelly, a loss prevention expert who worked in asset protection at Home Depot, told Insider last year that self-checkout forced retailers to make a trade-off between labor cost savings and the increased expense of theft. Inherently, that means there's going to be less eyes on a transaction. Kelly, who's now with Live View Technologies, added at the time, and there's going to be more of an opportunity for dishonest people to be dishonest. Gee, you think? I mean, here's the thing. If people are willing to steal when there's cameras everywhere in the store, do you think they're going to worry about stealing at the self-checkout line? Heck, they'll probably be out the door before anyone even realizes that they stole something. While Walmart and Kroger use sophisticated video monitoring and sensor tech to track merchandise through stores and self-checkout lanes, but some shoppers told Insider that they still saw unpaid items pass without raising an alarm, because there are absolutely ways to do that. Missed or skipped scans are not always intentional. People and machines make mistakes. In any case, the solution appears to be the same: assigning employees to monitor and assist the customers. Again, makes you wonder, why do they have these machines? Christopher Andrews, a Drew University socialist, wrote, "The overworked consumer told CNN last year that far from being the autonomous money collectors retailers were hoping for, self-checkout stations required supervision, maintenance, and IT support. Self-checkout, quote, delivers none of what it promises, unquote," he told the outlet. To be sure, many retailers are still investing in the technology, but some appear to be reconsidering how they use it and whether to bring more humans into the process so it runs smoothly. And that is the end of the article. So here's the thing with these self-checkout machines. And I've never really feared that they are going to take the jobs, if you will. I assume that they would take some, but like when people said, oh, well, if you raise the fast food minimum wage to $20 an hour, then the kiosks are going to replace everyone. And it's like, the kiosks can only replace so much. And here, like, they could maybe replace one or two cashiers. But here's the thing. Those cashiers, when they're not cashiering, they're making burgers. They're making shakes. They're pouring drinks and handing them out at the drive-through window. There are still people. So really, those kiosks have not replaced really anyone when you get down to it. And now we're seeing more and more that even if a store has self-checkout lanes, there's usually still a person for every other checkout lane there. Maybe it's not a person for every single checkout lane, but the days when it was brand new and there was like one person watching over all this that's dead and gone. Like, because if that person has to go and help someone else with their little checkout, then it gives someone else the opportunity to steal or miss a scan or something like that. So now they're hiring more and more people to keep an eye on these people. Never mind, some people go in, they just don't know how to use these machines. And yeah, what if the machine breaks down? Then yeah, it needs to be paid to be fixed. And these machines are fickle. They really are. You'd think with how much they cost, they would have like a long shelf life, but nope, it's mostly computer parts, and computers fry pretty quickly. So this is like a very interesting article, I think. And this is a very interesting situation because it's yet one more promise of the robots coming to take jobs, and it's not really panning out the way that it's supposed to. Now, we will in the future talk about things like AI and things like that, because that's probably important to discuss. But it seems for the time being, self-driving cars still are not a thing. And now, even though the self-checkout lanes seem to actually work, because of a variety of factors, people who just don't know how to use them, people who want the things back for them, or people who try to steal things because they're not afraid of a camera, they're just going to accidentally not scan something. Oh, and then, of course, something that wasn't touched upon in this article, a lot of people aren't using it anymore because if someone gets accused of stealing something and they haven't, well, if you use a self-checkout line, your defenses that I didn't do it are much, much weaker, because they're always going to make the claim, well, they try to avoid the camera. So some people are now not using these self-checkout machines because they don't want to get sued. They don't want to get taken to court by Walmart or Target or Best Buy or whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see where the self-checkout lanes are going, but it does appear, at least in the retail sector for now, you don't have to worry about your job being let go because of these self-checkout machines. And in fact, it looks like that's why they're always hiring, because they need people to keep an eye on these stupid machines, and that's defeating the whole purpose of having them in the first place. So I see Romeo is there. Well, hello, how are you doing? Thank you for joining me. But this is going to be the end of the stream and the show, especially since there's no questions here. And hey, boy, it feels good to be back doing this again. We'll see if we can't build this up again. But I'd like to know what you think about this. Do you worry about the self-checkout lanes? Do you think they're going to go away in light of recent evidence, or do you think they're just getting started? Would love to know. Comment below. Like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.